Jimmy, what's up, man?
Brother Jamie, what's going on, dude? Welcome to the program.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How about you?
We're out here, man.
Yeah.
Sorry I'm late.
Oh, no harm done. You're here now. That's what counts. So tell me, where are you calling from today?
I'm calling from Kansas City.
Okay. And you've been living there for a while now. Yeah?
Yeah. Oh, what, 8 years now?
Okay.
8 years.
Um, what's the best barbecue spot in Kansas City? Man.
Oh boy, the age-old argument. My favorite is place called Slaps Barbecue.
Okay.
It's kind of the newbie on the block. Some people would tell you otherwise, but it's definitely my favorite. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, that'd be my recommendation.
What are the others? I mean, there seems like there are different options. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say your big ones are going to be like Joe's KC. Q39 is the one that like you see Joe Buck and Troy Aikman at
Okay.
um,
All right.
like when they come in town for Chiefs games. Arthur Bryant's. One of my other favorites is called LC's. I mean, the list goes on and on, but those I would say those are probably your top choices.
Okay. And if you're ordering a plate at a barbecue place, what are you going with, Jamie?
Burnt ends for sure. Um, I'm not a huge like brisket guy. I stick to my burnt ends and my pulled pork, you
Okay.
know. So
Sounds good, dude.
yeah.
Being from or going to college in Indianapolis, did you go to
Yeah.
St. Elmo's at some point?
Oh yeah.
Okay, good.
Have to.
That's the standard. Are you much of a steak eater? I mean, do you
Oh
do
yeah.
that much? Okay.
Yeah. It's top of the line.
All
And the
right.
short cocktail.
What uh what cut of meat are you going with and how do you want it cooked at a steak?
Oh boy. Hmm. I'm gonna be boring. I love myself a good old filet.
Okay,
I'm a medium rare guy. I'm a firm believer that if you're gonna char it up, you might as well get a cheap steak. So
sure. That's fair. Um, and then A1 sauce, of course. I mean, there's different condiments to sort
yeah.
things, or are you much of a condiment guy?
Oh yeah. Yeah, you got to get a good steak sauce.
Okay. And I have to ask, being from Kansas City as well, Chiefs fan, obviously, yeah.
Yes.
Um, what's what do you think the future is for the Kansas City Chiefs? I mean, as long as Patrick Mahomes is there, they're a Super Bowl favorite, right?
Yeah, I would say at this point he's earned that respect. It seems like you could. I mean, last year he played with fifth and fifth, sixth string receivers, and he won a Super Bowl. So
Yeah.
I mean, he's kind of like. I mean, they paid him handsomely, right, to be that cornerstone. But um, I think. A lot of people are like, well, Chiefs fans are just like we're the new Patriots. We're just the bandwagon. But I would say that Chiefs fans have earned this, given how bad the Chiefs were, or just the amount of playoff. I mean, to the Colts especially, the amount of playoff losses in the past. So I know a lot of longtime Chiefs fans that they're basking in the golden age of Chiefs football.
Yeah. Well, and I just want to document this for my purposes.
Yeah,
Joe Flacco was recently named the starter. They've now rebuked that decision, and Anthony Richardson is back as
yeah,
QB1 with the Colts. So the revolving door and the disaster that is the quarterback position for the Colts is an ongoing process. So,
yeah.
I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think it will be a full rebuild by the end of the season with Anthony Richardson maybe at the helm. I don't know. We'll see. But
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, they
I don't know.
they got to figure out the right development plan for him, I think. I think it's tough because he you out so hot, you
Right.
know.
Right.
Um, but now he's showing signs of, that underdevelopment, and how are they going to handle that? I think that's really important because the talent's obviously there.
Yeah. You've never seen a quarterback tap out though in a game before, have you?
Nah, that's got to be addressed. That's a culture thing. And the
Yeah.
Colts have to establish that culture of, hey, we don't do that. You know what I'm saying? So,
Right. Right.
yeah.
Definitely. And you are a former UND football player. Remind me again, what was your position? Safety, yeah?
Yeah, yeah, like safety linebacker.
Okay. And remind me, heavily recruited out of high school. I mean, what led you to UND of all
Uh, I,
places?
I'm not super heavily recruited as far as like Division 1, right? But I mean, I had my choices of D2 schools. Um, but what drew me to UND, one, just being in the city. I really like. I mean, I love Indianapolis to this day. But at the time, I was a big exercise science guy. I wanted to go to PT school, and UND has a really, really good program, in a lot of health sciences, which was really appealing for me. So it's kind of a mix of, academic and best opportunity.
What did you end up graduating with from UND again?
Exercise science degree
Okay.
from UND.
And a lot of folks that go into like physical therapy from there. I mean, it's an offshoot to something else, right? Normally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Like I went and got my master's in public health after I, got my exercise science degree.
cool. And then, not to go through your career, but are you still a
Yeah.
teacher? I mean, what are you doing now?
No, so now I work as a public health specialist for an institution you wouldn't normally think of, but the Kansas City Public Library. Um,
Okay.
usually people think of a library as a place to go check out books, but it's an evolving space, especially in our current political times. It's the last real free space where people can get access to resources. So that's kind of where I'm at now.
Not to turn this political, but
Yeah,
how worried are you about the incoming Trump administration and the cuts he might make to libraries or and these public resources?
yeah. Obviously, I'm very concerned. I think there's a growing concern amongst not only, I mean, library spaces, public health spaces, healthcare spaces.
Yeah.
He has a track record of deregulation, which I don't love. Um, which is kind of funny to me because all of a sudden the Make America Healthy Again movement is starting, and somehow they're backing themselves with him, and I'm like, how is this possible? I'm sure we can get into that, but yeah, I'm extremely worried. I'm extremely uh, I mean, I think a lot of people are gonna, everyone freaked out over the COVID vaccines, but a lot of people are gonna lose their lives off of misinformation and
Yeah.
lack of policy regulation, which is
Um, Before I get into specific questions that I have, because I this is a big thing that we're trying to hone in a little bit. We're trying to dispel some misinformation. Is
yeah,
there any pieces of information that you want to pass along and make clear to folks that we can establish right now?
yeah. Uh, you know, I, I I encourage people to do the work, right, when it comes to making claims, especially about health information. Um, people, the polarization right now, people will jump on bandwagons
Yeah.
and just run with information that they really haven't researched, or they claim they've researched, but all it is an opinion of someone that's an influencer or someone they know. I think, that's important. It's really, really important piece we're missing. Um, and I think it's at the foundation of a lot of the issues we're struggling with.
And before we get into the questions I have, you are a
Yeah.
certified health education specialist, so you do have
Yes.
a background in this to be able to answer these questions.
Yes.
Um, Let me ask by this because I think American culture, one thing that we have created for the world, good or bad, is
Mm,
fast food.
yeah.
How often should people eat fast food, and are there better and worse places to go?
Oh boy, that's a loaded question.
I know. We unpack it a little bit for me.
Yeah. I would, I'm a big everything in moderation person. I don't demonize foods. Personally, a lot of people would disagree with me. But fast food's one of those things, okay, if you're having it once every 2 weeks, once a month, right? It's not gonna affect you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Um, it but we built a culture of, well, if you do it one time it's toxic, or if you do it one time it's going to derail your whole health. Like that fear-based approach, one, isn't helpful, and two, it doesn't change people's behavior, right? um but now if you're eating fast food, I'm sure you've seen Super Size Me before.
Hmm. Yeah.
I mean, if you're eating fast food daily, I would say that's even even 2 to 3 times a week, I would say that's a little much, right? Um, because obviously fast food's built for palatability. I mean, it has an addictive quality to it too, right?
Hmm.
So, you're typically going to eat a higher caloric quantity when you consume fast food, which we know is not great for a lot of health metrics. So, as far as ranking fast food, honestly, there are some chains that are taking strides, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I've seen, just in some lists I've seen Taco Bell at the top of the list as far as, making changes to their menu, and like the type of ingredients they're using. They're even giving people more options, whether it's bowls, options with more vegetables. Um, I mean, if you consider Chipotle fast food, I mean, they're making efforts too. Um,
Right.
ironically, ironically, with the regulations that we want to deregulate now, which we can get into. But I would say, look out for those chains that are actually trying to, make those strides.
Well, and I've talked to athletes who have lived abroad, lived outside the United States, and they say that fast food tastes different, that it tastes better. I
Yeah,
mean, what are some of those regulations that you want to talk about? And I mean, I know that our food
yeah,
is certainly made a little bit different here in the US than it
yeah,
is other places. So,
yeah. I would say, I mean, obviously they're using different ingredients. So you're gonna have more of a localized approach, for economic reasons in Europe or wherever you get your fast food. Um, it does taste different. I'm not gonna lie about that. For a long time whether it's additives or substitutes, businesses want to cut corners, right, to save some money. Um, and I think now you're seeing the reaction to that, right? Um, and why, I mean, everyone's like fast food's getting more expensive. I'm like, well, yeah, it's getting more expensive because these companies are trying to make strides to make their foods healthier, right? Or taste like real food.
yeah.
Um, that it goes both ways, right? Everyone wants it to be cheap because it's fast and convenient, but they want it to be better quality. Those two work against each other. Um, so to get back to your original question, yeah, it tastes different. But fast food culture, ironically, is getting healthier in the United States.
Well, I mean, isn't one of the things about uh fast food that I mean, it tastes good. You said it's an
Yeah.
addictive thing.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. I just
Yeah.
there. I think there's only so many options for certain folks because I mean there's food deserts. That was something else I was going to ask you about. Like
Yeah.
how do we avoid that in the United States so that people have an option? But
Yeah.
the way it's structured is the best quality stuff is the most expensive, which people can't afford. I mean,
Hmm.
it seems
Yeah.
backwards in the way
It is
that
backward.
they
It is
approach it.
backwards.
So,
And it's a complex answer, top down system wide, getting back to what you originally said. Um, you know, you've heard of the Maha movement. It's an offshoot of MAGA. Um,
oh, okay, yeah, right,
Make America Healthy Again. Um, at its baseline, it's coming from a privileged standpoint because, like you said, we're demonizing people eating these things, but what do they have access to, right? Cities like Indianapolis, Kansas City, St. Louis, Chicago, your Midwest core, you have redlined areas, right, where public policy has purposefully, pulled economic success out of, or, created a culture of, toxicity, right?
right,
You know the places in Indianapolis where you can drive to and there's a fried chicken joint right next to a liquor store,
right.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's all, I mean, and you take into account lack of transportation, um, disability rates, right? If I'm disabled, I have to have immediate options, right? If
Sure.
I don't have a car, I'm screwed, right? So I go back to, this everyone wants America to be healthy, right? But it's about going after the right things and the right people, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Because chronic disease is way more prevalent in lower income populations and within the areas that we're discussing, right? But if I'm raised on, grape soda and a cheeseburger, and that's what, becomes customary to me, what different do I know,
Sure.
right? If I've never
Yeah.
been exposed to decent foods, it, who's to really to blame, right? And then also just, and I'm not against, I defend a lot of research within the food system, but I'm not against criticizing food system too, right? We subsidize a lot of things like corn, wheat, your standard, soybeans, your standard crops, but we're not doing a lot in terms of, promoting growing healthier food to reduce costs, which goes back to what you were talking about with, why are healthy items always so expensive, right? So I think it's a top-down issue, and it's a complex issue, and quite frankly, it's not as simple of an issue as the Trump administration's making it out to be.
Well, I'm sure they'll make ketchup a vegetable like the Reagan administration did. And
Yeah,
I can say, having lived on the north side of Indianapolis and Carmel, that there's
yeah,
always a Whole Foods around when you're
yeah,
living in a place like Carmel,
yeah,
with decent stuff.
yeah,
And then you get outside of that, a little bit different. But
yeah,
not to demonize certain foods, but
yeah.
um, I've always felt better when I reduce carbohydrates. I mean, is there any particular food group that people should avoid?
Oh. I'm a big proponent of find what works for you,
Right.
right? Because nutrition's really complicated in that, everybody's body's different and we process things differently, right? So, while a low carb diet might work for somebody, reducing saturated fats or meat-based products may help somebody else, right? And that's where I think we get kind of lost in the sauce when, you have your keto warriors and your low carb warriors. You have people that want to go to bat for um, certain, lifestyle nutrition choices that work for them, but may not work for other people, right?
Right. Right.
Um, so that's why, when I'm talking to, patrons here or just community members, I'm really hesitant to demonize certain foods. I stick to the basics, right? Things that we know for sure, right? Higher fiber diets traditionally have better outcomes. Um, when you meet your protein, carbohydrate, fat recommendations, again, for yourself, you're achieving optimal health, right?
Yeah.
So, right, like you found that, just in your own experience, that lower carbohydrate diets work for you and you feel better. That's what it's all about, right? To
Mhm.
me, it's that figuring out process and finding out what's the healthiest for you and what makes you feel more optimal.
Well, and when you say fiber, I always think of the frosted mini wheats. I mean, what when
Yeah.
you say fiber, what does that mean?
So fiber, it's in a lot of your plant-based foods. So, typically fiber, it's no coincidence that, okay, in the United States we have low fiber intake, but we also have low fruit and vegetable intake.
Hmm.
Um, so you're gonna find fiber in, the skins of your fruits and vegetables, and within, I don't want to get too deep into like biology or microbiology, but
Yeah.
that's where you're gonna find your fiber. It's like you said, frosted mini wheats, some of your fortified, cereals that are made from whole grain products. Um, there's been a lot of demonization of whole grains, which the research doesn't back it, right? But those are your traditional foods where um, you're going to find a lot of high fiber, quantities, which is working countercultural with fast food culture, with highly processed culture of foods. So, um, and fiber is associated with all types of reduced cancer risk, especially like colorectal cancers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, did that answer your question?
It did. I
Okay.
didn't, when people say
Yeah,
fiber, I just didn't know what
yeah,
it meant.
yeah.
As far as I'll ask you about this because we're intaking it into our bodies. How do you feel about like alcohol, marijuana, cigarettes, all these vices? I mean, in moderation, right? It won't hurt us too bad.
Yeah. Well, I will say, um, I'm sure you've heard carcinogen thrown around a lot as a buzzword
Right.
within foods. Um, Alcohol and cigarettes especially are at the top of the list as far as we have strong data that shows how high intakes, especially, cigarettes, how high intakes of them really have a causal effect with various types of cancers, with heart disease, with metabolic diseases. So, especially with alcohol, moderation is considered 1 to 2 drinks for a reason, right? I not and not many people, I mean, I'm not above that. A lot of people don't abide by that, right? But just knowing that that is a risk, cigarettes for sure. Marijuana, it's kind of in a weird spot of, benefits versus, possible issues. Plus, marijuana is different because it can be, turned into various different forms. So
Right.
you're not inhaling it. Um, but yeah, I would say, for sure alcohol and cigarettes are carcinogenic, which I don't want to get on a tangent, but people will demonize certain foods, but then drink heavily and then talk about carcinogens. And I'm like, do you know you're drinking like one of the top carcinogenic food items, right? And you're
Right.
talking about other different types of foods and how they affect your health. So I feel like alcohol gets a pass in our culture a lot just because it's so ingrained with what we do, on a weekly basis.
It's never something I enjoyed, even in college, man. I mean, I
Yeah.
just, every once in a while, maybe for the birthday or something, but that's about
hmm
it.
hmm
Um, one thing that I can vividly remember too, growing up with dad, he eventually got diabetes because he drank too many Coca-Cola,
Yeah.
in the morning, and
Yeah.
that was a habit of his. I feel like sugar is more dangerous than people want to talk about. How
Yep.
dangerous is sugar?
It's it's especially in the forms that we're uh consuming it in, it's an issue. Um, because sugar is addictive, right? And especially, I'm just gonna use Coca-Cola because you brought it up. If you look at the label, 60, 70 grams of sugar, um,
Yeah, it's
hitting your system that quickly is not a good thing. And it's not natural, right? Um, fruits and vegetables, sugar is a carbohydrate, right? So fruits and vegetables are also have sugars, but what do they also have? They have fiber. They have all these other various properties that reduce the sugar, effect on your body. Um, but the amounts of sugar we're consuming and the way we're consuming it,
hmm
um, is an issue, and it's why you're seeing, a lot of, metabolic disease issues like diabetes, on the rise. Um, and that's a food system issue that we need to fix as a society for sure. Um, but you know, I, and that's why I'd rather focus on that than, food dyes and
hmm
fluoride in our water, and all of a sudden the raw milk warriors are coming out of the window and saying raw milk, raw milk. I'd rather focus
Right.
on reducing sugar intake, especially in highly processed foods, than all those things because we know that that is a driving factor in the declining health of our country.
We touched on the Trump administration, but one guy that's gonna apparently have a lot of regulatory control over our agencies is RFK Jr.
Yeah,
Do you have anything you want to address with him and what he has said in regard to public health?
yeah. I am an outspoken opponent of his currently. Um, I it's tough because I understand why he has a base, right? He fought Monsanto. I mean, he's done decent things, but my problem is that he's turning it into a religious cult version of what it is. You
hmm
know what I'm saying?
Right.
And you kind of have the same effect with him as in terms of health as you are with Donald Trump. It doesn't matter what data we have to go against it. It doesn't matter what opposing opinions we have to go against it. People are going to believe it, right? We can lie straight to people's faces at this point. and
Right.
people don't care.
Right.
Um, but overall, I just don't. Again, his concerns are not primary public health concerns that we have in the United States right now. Um, and honestly, you see a lot of his base coming from predominantly white, predominantly, upper middle class, so from a privileged demographic,
Mhm.
um, who aren't seeing the things you and I just talked about, like, hey, how about we get people access to decent health care
Right.
or access to, fruits and vegetables or, healthier foods? How about we start there rather than, you know, um, go after some of the things he's talking about, which are pseudoscience at best, when you break down the research. And you cannot drive public policy based upon the things he is saying, because those have drastic effects not only now, but 20 years from now, right? And to suggest that everyone, there's this big narrative now, like big food, big nutrition, the big bad government, the FDA, the CDC. If people knew what it took to work for some of those agencies and the qualifications you have to have,
Hmm.
um, these aren't dumb people, right? They know what they're doing. And we throw around the word science so trivially, like these methods are tested so thoroughly and they're reviewed by boards of researchers. Like they're not just getting passed at a whim because folks are getting bought off, right?
Right.
Um, and that's my problem is that's the narrative now, and you can just go around saying, well, so and so's being bought and paid for with no real evidence, right? Which contributes to the misinformation. I went on a tangent, but that is my
Well,
small, my full scope of why I don't approve. Of course, everyone's for making America healthy again, but how are we doing it, right?
exactly.
And that's my problem with him.
Well, and from a political science standpoint, that's a stamp of fascism, is to rid of the expertise,
Yep.
get rid of all the experts, hire
Mhm.
your friends who will
Yeah.
say the slogan but not have any kind of plan. They'll have a concept of a plan, as they
Yeah.
say on the other side.
Yep.
Um, and not to demonize the GOP, but I want to
Yeah.
document this. They had Dr. Oz and Dr. Phil
Hmm.
as two main spokespeople. They think if some folks think if they're on TV, they're some kind of expert. That doesn't
No,
necessarily mean they're qualified to talk about what they're talking about.
no. And I
So
can guarantee you those two are getting paid a lot of money to say those things.
correct. And we can thank Oprah for both of those people. Thank you,
Yeah.
Oprah.
Yeah.
And I'm not here to demonize Oprah, but she's not as perfect as people say.
Yeah.
So anyway, one thing that I heard that I remind myself of, I'm not always conscious of it, but we have to treat food like medicine, or medicine will become our food. Do you agree with
Yeah,
that statement?
I do. I
Okay.
do. Um, people don't realize that, food is their first defense, right? Um, or, especially young people, they don't realize that like what they're consuming now is going to contribute to issues later, right? Um, but not, I agree with it. I don't like demonizing medicine because medicine is very important, especially in certain aspects, but food is your front line, right? And what you're consuming will potentially determine, how, like you said, with diabetes, heart disease, what medicines you're gonna, have to take later on. And, I know a lot of people talk about, the cost of food and and how it's shifted towards ultra processed foods, but at some point you're going to pay for it, right? whether
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
whether it's now or whether it's down the line with medical bills, um, in treating a disease, and also like you see this, well, I'm going to die anyways, so why would I care? I'm going to have to
Yeah.
die from something, but we're all going to die, but you can die gracefully, right? You can
Right.
die in a way that is not to get morbid, I'm sorry, but not to get, you don't have to die suffering. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to die from these complicated, metabolic diseases that are, just taking a lot of people way too soon.
Well, one thing that Jim Carrey brought to my attention, he always seems to waken things up in me. Um, he talked about depression and how, that's a very real thing, but if you're not at least trying to get out of the depression by eating healthy
Yeah.
foods, getting sunlight on your face. I mean,
Hmm.
I want to say too about Carmel, I am
Yeah.
3 blocks from the Monon Trail where I
Hmm.
can go on there, see trees,
Yeah.
access to parks and recreation is important too. I work for the
Yeah.
Carmel Clay Parks and Recreation, so I wanted to add that too.
Yeah.
Anyway,
And like getting to your point, like I'm gonna getting back to some of Robert Kennedy's points, these are not new concepts, right? Sunshine is not a new concept of what makes you like that
no, yeah.
it contributes to your health. Adequate water intake, exercise, even going for a walk, right? Like you you never regret a walk that you take no matter what mood you're in,
No,
right?
for sure.
Um, like these simple things that at baseline you can do to help, symptoms of depression or anxiety or um, a lot of people that suffer from ADHD, they reduce their symptoms drastically when they introduce exercise,
Right.
right? Um, it's important to do these things at baseline, and then if you need medication, then seek medication, right? But don't rely on medication as your first line, and then, um, I don't want to call it lazy, but it's reactive, right? It's not you being proactive about your health.
Well, one thing that I saw the other night, I don't normally see commercials, but the US does specialize in having those medicine commercials of ask your doctor about X, Y, and Z medicine, and the symptoms are worse than what the problem is normally.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, or the side effects, not the
Yeah.
symptoms. But goodness. Something else I want to talk to you about.
Yeah.
Food allergies. I feel
Yeah.
like folks there are more food allergies than there used to be. Is there a reason for that or no?
Yeah. Um, a lot of it is exposure. Um, so, with, I'm just going to use kids as an example. When you talk to pediatricians, um, if you never introduce a food to someone, they're more likely to develop an allergy later in life,
Okay,
right?
sure.
So, um, it's kind of a catch-22. Like if I'm so fearful of my kid or whoever having food allergies that I never expose them to it, I'm only increasing the risk for it. Does that make sense?
No, I figured it was something as simple as not exposing them to it. I just like
Yeah.
peanut butter used to be a common allergy. Now you can't even touch a peanut or someone will, go
Yeah.
into convulsions. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that explains the whole scope, but there's a lot of evidence for that. Which is why, when you talk to doctors, they say, introduce these things, gradually or in small amounts.
Right.
Um, and uh, it also, it's the other side of this is we have better ways of detecting it, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Um, so it's not necessarily saying, more and more people are getting it. It's just we have better ways and we're more aware of diagnosing it too, right? Um, which you could say that about a lot of things, whether it's various mental health disorders. Medicine's just getting better, right? At finding these things earlier, and it's going to look like it's increasing, but it may have been there all along. We just couldn't, we didn't have the technology or we didn't have the practice for it. Um, so I think it's kind of twofold in that direction.
We are coming up on the holidays. A lot of food will
Yeah.
be consumed. Do you have
Yes.
any favorite Thanksgiving dishes that you like?
Oh man. Oh dude. I mean I love my carbs, so as do many people.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
uh, you can never go wrong with some mashed potatoes with gravy.
Word.
Um, I like you got to make good stuffing. It's got to be good stuffing. Not all stuffing's created equal. Uh,
That's fair. Yeah.
that stovetop stuff, give or take. But people that make some good stuffing, I get down with that. I've never been a big turkey guy.
Okay.
Um, I This is gonna be unpopular, but if I could just get everyone a steak and have a steak, we would do it. You know,
I
I
agree. Yeah,
I
I'd
know
much rather have that.
turkey's tradition, but yeah, those are some of my favorite Thanksgiving foods.
Mac and cheese? You one of those guys too?
I'm not a
Or
big mac and cheese guy. I know
oh,
a lot of
all
people
right.
love mac and cheese. I feel like if you love cheese, you just love cheese. You know what I'm saying?
And you're not someone that loves cheese? Or
I don't, it's, I'll eat it. I don't like my wife loves cheese, like loves cheese, but it's
uh,
not something that I'm like craving all the time. You know what I'm saying?
I forgot you're married, by the way.
I am. Yes.
Who does more cooking at home, you or your wife?
Oh, we split it. We cooking's kind of it's that shared value time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Uh, where a lot of people think of cooking as a chore, but we see it as a space for us to talk or to work on something together, going back to like doing positive things for your mental health, like that's something that, fills our cup up. So, yeah, we kind of share the load there.
What's your specialty and what's her specialty as far as
Oh,
the meal goes?
Ooh. Oh man, what does she do really well? Oh, she's perfected, like cooking salmon's not an easy feat. I don't know if you like salmon.
Yeah, I've
Um,
heard the same thing. I don't eat a lot, but I've heard the same thing.
yeah, like it's very, very easy to dry salmon out. Um, but she's just perfected, various forms of cooking it. Um, and I've always been jealous of how she cooks. I mean, I've tried. I don't know why I overdo it or I just don't cook it right and it turns out like rubber.
Mm.
Um, but I would say she's really good at that. Um, what's my specialty? Oh boy. Um, Jimmy, I don't know if I have a specialty. I'm kind of a jack of all trades. Um,
See, the what a guy should specialize in. I'm just giving
yeah.
some advice here to all the fellas. You gotta be able to cook a breakfast for
Yeah.
that's got to be it. For
Yeah.
a guy. So
Kind of a master, like a master of none, jack of all trades. Like I don't cook anything like super well, like or like wow, that was wonderful.
okay,
But I'm not gonna like most people don't walk away from my cooking me like God, that was terrible, you know.
yeah,
Um, so yeah,
okay. Do you have any aspirations to do like culinary school with your nutrition background or anything like that?
no man. Um, I'm much more I'm much more embedded in the advocacy side, and you know, I'm always gonna beat the drum for good nutrition and good policy surrounding nutrition and creating healthier communities. Like that's what I love. I feel like I mean, people that are in culinary are truly, truly gifted at it.
Yeah.
And like the creative side, the creative brain you have to have to really perfect that is just not in my forte. I'm more of a left brain guy. I love my data. I love, that side of things. So I don't, I'll stick to my cooking at home for my family.
Mhm. Sounds good, man.
Yeah.
As far as we've talked a lot about healthy stuff, but cheap food, like
Yeah.
you just want to feel really
Yeah.
good, having something sugary. What are you gonna eat, man?
Yeah. First and foremost, I'm not a believer in cheat food. The cheat food model.
You know what I'm
Um,
talking about, though, when I
yeah, I know,
reference
I
it.
know.
Yeah. Okay.
If I man, I love I love a good I'm not a candy guy. Like some people love candy. I'm just not a candy guy. I love a good cheesecake, man. That's my
Okay.
go-to.
Wow.
Uh I don't know why I love cheesecake, but I just do. And I have to limit myself on it,
Wow.
on a special occasion.
Yeah. Cheesecake Factory is probably what I'll do for Christmas dinner this year. That's always a
Really?
special place. Yeah.
Good
Well,
deal.
you feel fancy when you go to the
Yeah,
Cheesecake Factory, dude.
yeah.
Yeah. all those places. Let's go through some of your other stuff. Favorite music, please.
Favorite music. Um, I'm
What will we see on your playlist? I won't limit you to one thing.
a lot of hip hop. Um, I love me some hip hop, especially like 90s hip hop, some of the earlier hip hop. I'm gonna sound like an old grump now. I don't really mess with a lot of the new stuff. I think I'm not a mumble rap guy. I think SoundCloud's done more harm than good. Like a lot more people can get their music out there, but it's decreased the quality of music, you
Yeah.
know?
No,
Um, I sound old, like back in my day. Um, but I love me some hip hop. I'm not I just love good music, but that's my genre.
so we're talking like Run DMC, Tupac, like what do you yeah, what is it?
Yeah, or like um some of your true lyricists, like if you've heard of KRS-One,
Right.
um who else? Um I think Run DMC kind of started it. They started the rhyming piece and they were a good liftoff. Um but who else am I thinking of? Sorry, my names are evading me currently. I love Public Enemy back in the day. Um,
Great.
huge Wu-Tang fan. Love Wu-Tang. They brought a whole different flavor that people just don't really appreciate to this day. Rakim, the list goes on and on. Um, I
Awesome.
mean, I also love my 2000s hip hop too. I think that was a really cool time to
Yeah.
to Um, but there's some artists nowadays that try to keep it alive. Your Kendrick Lamar's. Um, Even like Eminem is trying to inspire new artists to like bring back some decent talent.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm rambling. But yeah, those are some of my go-tos.
Yeah, well, even in the blues genre, which is what I listen to, you've got
Yeah,
guys like Kingfish that are new and
yeah,
coming out with some things. So, I mean,
yeah,
there's talent out there, but you
yeah.
gotta find it.
You got to really dig for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I always do this with folks. Is there any
Yeah.
goals you want to manifest on the podcast for yourself in the future?
On your podcast?
Yeah, just like I'm hoping to do this. Yeah.
Oh man. I'm hoping to, I'm hoping to give your listeners, you know, one, healthy skepticism, right? Like, let's not just, um, you know, blanket people and demonize certain people. Like, let's really critically think about what we're doing. Like building a more critically thinking minded type of audience. I think that's huge. That'd be a big goal. I wish more podcasts did that because I mean, obviously, as a podcaster, you got to get your listens and you got to get your audience, but
Mhm.
don't sacrifice your morals. You know what I'm saying? Don't sacrifice things that that can bring good help to people and good resources to people. That'd be a big goal of mine. Um,
So
and
what you're saying is avoid Joe Rogan.
I used to listen to Rogan, ironically, like
Yeah,
back
he
in
has a few back
yeah
before he converted that aren't
yeah.
terrible.
Yeah, like Rogan, you saw this shift in Rogan, when he started inviting, he started giving the Alex Joneses the platform, and he realized this guy's entertaining and I can drive up my viewership and
Right.
once he started having a lot of controversial figures on and not really questioning them, you know what I'm saying? Like when you have controversial figures on your podcast, it's your duty to question them and to get valid information out of them.
Yep.
And he stopped doing it, man. He stopped, and now he has an army of Rogan bros that believe everything he says. And I'm like, this is not a good thing. I mean, how many news stations were like, wow, the Rogan effect really came into play in the election? Like, I don't think he understands the platform he has and how important it is for him to really, really get back to, which he won't now. I mean, he's making too much money. Um, but there was a time I loved Rogan. Rogan had used to have great podcasts and he used to have great guests on that they would have actual good conversations. Now it's just nonsense. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. If you told me the Fear Factor host would be the guy
Yeah,
that tilts an election one way or the other,
yeah,
and yeah, I'm not trying to describe the Joe Rogan listener to the audience, but I can't believe how many angry young men there are out there. I don't know if this has to do with diet particularly at all, but like there are millions of frustrated young men out there that are full of resentment, and I don't know how you undo it
yeah.
necessarily.
Jimmy, you
So,
could have a full series on that. I'm not kidding. And the factors
yeah,
related to that. Um, to me, it's sad and disheartening that young men feel like that's where they need to turn, you know, or this, some of these Twitter accounts, your body, my choice. I mean, I think,
Jesus, yeah,
we really need to take a step back from a masculine perspective, and ask ourselves, what is masculinity and how are we perpetuating strong masculine figures versus toxic masculine figures? And what are we doing for that generation coming up? Because, like you said, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of insecurity, um, and they don't have the maturity and they don't have the mechanisms, especially now with phones and social media in their hands, to really, really to process what's going on and what's happening. So, um, if you want to do a podcast series on that, go for it because we need it.
maybe you'll help me produce that thing.
Yeah,
As far as I want to ask you this too. You're a father now, aren't you?
I am. Yes,
How concerned are you about the future for your child?
I'm very. I want to remain hopeful though. Um, at some point it's like, what can I do, right? All I can do is instill the values in her, um, and well, I mean, also let her become her own person. But we have to start thinking of it from a state of how can I equip this generation to deal with the nonsense that's occurring, right?
Yeah.
But I'm very concerned. I'm a climate change believer. I'm concerned about that and how we deny any type of involvement in that is concerning to me, especially now that we've gone so far right, in our politics that we literally have no concern in deregulating and pulling any kind of money out, that is, supporting, pro climate change policy. That concerns me. You're seeing a lot of young people with climate anxiety and looking for resources surrounding climate anxiety,
Hmm.
um, which is detrimental to mental health and stress. Um, you know, Obviously, as a father of a daughter, I'm very, very concerned about far right wing shifting politics.
Yeah.
Um, and allowing her to have the freedom to access certain things that I think are beneficial for our society. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, I'm concerned, but I also want to remain hopeful, in that, we can do this, and there's enough of us out there that, you know, can help this next generation too.
Well, brother, I just want to give you a compliment personally. Having played football and then doing what you're doing now,
Yeah,
I think you're the exact kind of masculinity that folks need to embrace. Not this, cultural, I
yeah,
need my gun and I
yeah,
need my protein type of masculinity, but a,
yeah,
a masculinity of, I'm going to protect my own, I'm going to protect women,
yep,
I'm going to protect the most vulnerable of society. I don't know where that got lost in the shuffle, but I think
yep,
that's what men need to do now.
yeah. And I think we're a crucial part of that equation, man. Like
Yeah.
we can't let, you know, this toxic culture just run amok and have, obviously they want to have a voice and they're obnoxious and we have to stand on our own ground and be like, no, this is not what we stand for from a masculine perspective, and this is not masculinity. And being that model, it's so important. And I have my faults too. I'm not going to sit here and act like I don't.
As do I. Yeah,
Yeah,
as do I.
but
Yeah.
it's about the growth process and not being so arrogant and so delusional that, all the beta men around the country are just betas and they didn't vote for Trump and they don't really know what it means to take the bull by the horns. Like that's nonsense. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and
Um,
I just want to document this here.
yeah,
I think a huge problem is being gay or having a variation in your sexual preference. That doesn't
yeah.
make you less masculine
No,
either. No.
completely different things.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I think that's a huge problem in the GOP that they have to figure out internally. There's nothing we can do to solve that one.
yeah. Oh God. Again, another podcast episode.
Yeah, we got like four series that we need to
I
do
know.
now. Um,
Yeah.
let's end on this, buddy.
Yeah.
What's the best piece of advice you've received in your career and life that stands out to you?
Oh man, the best piece of advice um, is always, I had a mentor that told me, no matter what situation you're in, always maintain a healthy dose of curiosity, right?
Right.
Because if you're always curious and you're always looking at things from the mind frame of, I have something to learn here, or I need to grow in this area and be able to honestly reflect on, whether it's work, whether it's home, whether it's being a parent. If you always see yourself as something that's evolving, um, you really can't lose, right? And you're gonna look back and be like, I came all this way, and I'm my only competition, right? Being
Right.
the better version of myself, is that, and I think, that stuck with me for so long, and it's been at the core of my values and drives so much of my decision making because, if I'm always remaining curious, that means I'm always, questioning my beliefs and seeing how can I help people more? How can I make this more efficient? Not this, and right now I feel like that's countercultural. Like, I don't know, you're in the media space way more than I am, but
Mm-hmm.
right now it's I know this. I need to ram it down everybody's throat and be controversial and make, you know what I'm saying? And that's just not, um, that doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help anybody around you, right? So, just maintaining that healthy dose of curiosity throughout your life is a simple, easy phrase that I think everyone can live by.
I totally agree with that. The only thing I would add in addition to that, and maybe
Yeah,
we differ here,
yeah,
in an era of Trumpism, if you
yeah,
need to block someone in order to
yeah.
remove that toxicity,
Oh,
do it,
yeah.
bro. Like
Healthy boundaries.
these folks are not savable, a lot of
Yeah,
them. Like you
yeah,
need to move on and find a different group of people.
yeah. No, yeah. Like healthy curiosity within a certain boundary, right?
Yeah.
Um, and we as a community, we'd be better for it.
Yeah. Um, Jamie, thank you so much for being on here, bro. How can people connect and reach out to you if they feel compelled to do that?
Yeah, people can connect with me. I only have personal social media. It's just my name, at Jamie Plack. Um, I, I use my social media platforms to share, a lot of evidence-based stuff, um, or, just the way I'm thinking about certain things. I'm not shy about that. I'm always down to engage in
Okay.
beneficial dialogue. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I would say social media is the best way. Um, and dude, just thank you for giving me, the opportunity here. And I hope your listeners benefit. I'm always open to feedback and I'm always open to having a conversation. So if they have any questions, never hesitate.
We'll have to do a episode in the future. Can we
Yes,
do that right now? All right.
please, please, please. I would love to.
All right. Folks, to hear this episode and all others, make your way over to linktree.com/JBK on air. You can follow me at JBK on air on all social media platforms. And until next time, have a great day and a better tomorrow.